Good evening, everybody. This is Joyce from Beau Creations. Hi, Irene. How are you from a snow-drenched Indiana? I'm so sorry. If it makes you feel any better at all, I don't know. I'm in long sleeves for the first time this year. It is really cold. Hi, Teresa. Can everybody hear me tonight? I hope. Please tell me you can hear me. This is my first time doing this solo, so I am trying. Can everybody hear me okay? If so, give me a thumbs up. Hi, Bethany. How are you? Hello, Marina. Oh, the retreat was wonderful. Yes, you can hear me? Oh, hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Okay, so tonight I'm going to talk to you about Happy Cold Tuesday. I know, and look at this. I'm in long sleeves. Did you ever think you'd see that? Look, and what's even better is that it says Beau Creations. You see that? I have a long sleeve Beau Creation shirt. Hi, Terry. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome, welcome. Tonight, guys, we are going to learn everything you never wanted to know about embossing powders. You know, I did. I had to use you guys, I have the funniest story. I have a brand new car, and this car is so bougie. I have never had anything like it in my life. And it has a heated steering wheel. When in Florida, and whenever am I going to use a heated steering wheel? But yes, I had my little heated steering wheel on the way to work today, and it was so nice. I'll probably never use it again, but in Florida, I had my little seat warmer on. I had my steering wheel, all kinds of things. I know it was 31 degrees. The iguanas are falling out of the trees. The turtles are drowning. The manatees don't know what to do. They got to go hide in the springs. It's bad here, Irene. I mean, we may not be getting snow, but you know, serious things are happening. Joyce is using her heated steering wheel. You know, what next? I don't know. It is great for arthritis in your hands. It was very cold this morning. So anyway, welcome, welcome. Tonight, we're going to talk about everything you never, ever, or maybe you did, maybe you didn't want to know about embossing powders. So we're going to talk about it because our deal of the week today is embossing powders, and you can check that out on beaucreations.com. Just search for embossing powders, and it will be right there. We have all these incredible embossing powders, but tonight I'm going to show you from step 1 to step 1,000 how you do embossing powders, because I have heard so many people say, I tried to emboss, but I just can't do it. I was made for flip-flops, not tennis shoes. I get you. I am so sorry you guys are, but you know what? This is Florida. We're not supposed to be 31 degrees. You know, those of you that missed the retreat this weekend, holy cow. It was the best I have ever felt in my life. It was such an amazing weekend. I think I missed number 735. Irene, I'm so happy you're here today. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to switch over to the picture-in-picture. Irene's probably laughing her tush off right now. I'm going to try to switch over to the picture-in-picture. Woohoo, I did it. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Now let's see if we can continue having audio, video, and everything in picture-in-picture. Isn't that cool? Okay. And my creepy camera is following me, so that's kind of cool. This is my creepy camera, you guys. What did I do? Let's go back to it. There we go. All right. See, I can even change it between screens now. I'm so excited. How stupid. All right. So first thing with embossing powder that you need. These are the must-haves of embossing. And I'm going to just turn my computer over here so I can see all of y'all's comments. My hubby was impressed with the book that you made. Oh, good. Good. And couldn't attend the retreat. I know, the worst part ever. Don't worry, Irene. We're going to have another one because it was so much fun. We decided to do it again. All right. Thank you, Diana. I appreciate that. Okay. First and foremost, you have to have a heat tool, some sort of heat source. A hair dryer will not work, guys. A hair dryer is just simply not hot enough to do the job. Okay, so you must have a heat tool. And of course, mine is teal. It's 2 speeds for a reason. And I'll show you that in just a minute. So first and foremost, you got to have a heat tool. Secondly, let's talk about these things. I have a plethora of these things. So let's talk about what these are. All right. So these are the anti-static powder tools. And the reason that they're important is because it keeps the embossing powder to only stick where it needs to stick. Okay. So what is the difference between all of these? Well, really, it's just the style. This is Tailored Expressions, and it has a powder inside of it. Most times it's cornstarch or baby powder or something like that. Way back when you used your toaster oven for embossing. Oh, Christy, that's so funny. I never heard that before, that's for sure. Okay, so anti-powder static tool. This is Tailored Expressions, and you just rub it across the paper like that. I don't use this as often as I like, only because sometimes my ink is wet and then I get ink on my dauber right here. So, this is all personal preference. Most of them are refillable with the powder that you can use inside. I do not prefer cornstarch or baby powder simply because on the black, it doesn't go away. Like you have to wipe it off with a baby wipe. We'll talk about that in just a minute. The little powder bags, you can achieve this with a nylon and some powder inside of it. Again, these are, you just, make sure that you have powder on your surface, and they all do the same exact thing. I keep mine in a plastic bag so that the humidity does not get to it. So that's what I have. And then this one is from EK Success. The thing that I love about this is the smell. It smells like lavender. And I'm not sure that has anything to do with the quality of it, but man, oh man, it sure does smell good. The thing I don't like about it is that it has such a tiny little brush. So I'm sitting there all day long trying to get my powder spread across my surface. So usually what I end up doing is taking the bottom off and using a paintbrush like this, So that's that one. Now, this is my favorite, okay? This one, I like the style of it because the bristles are loose. See that? You can see the powder coming out of that. I can rub it across the top of my surface and then pull my sheath up, put it back in the cap, and just like that, it collapses. Now, yes, because when you heat this one from EK Success, it actually smells like lavender. So that's my favorite thing about it. But what I like about this one most is this is filled with diatomaceous earth clay. And that's important because it wipes off of your black. And let me show you what I mean. If I'm embossing on black cardstock, watch this. Let's say I use the, Tailored Expressions one, okay? So I've got my powder, and you can see that it's white on my cardstock, okay? And normally after you emboss, you would just wipe the powder off, but you see how it is still white? Now watch what happens when I use the diatomaceous earth clay. I'm going to turn this around. Look at that. It does the job and no white powder residue. So that's why I prefer this one, because it is that diatomaceous clay, and it doesn't, so, and yes, it is refillable, Diana. You just simply open the bottle of it, take this little stopper thing out, the bottom of it, take the stopper out, and then you refill it. Isn't that cool? So that's the one that I choose. But again, it's all personal preference, and you do you, boo. That's all I'm going to say. All right. So your anti-static powder tool, of course, you need a surface to put it on. That we're going to talk about too. All right. And then we need to talk about how does it get onto the tag? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. Versamark is probably the number one way that everybody knows about. But did you know that embossing powder will stick to water? It'll stick to pigment inks. It'll stick to water-based inks. Hi, Verna. It'll stick to most any surface that will hold it long enough for you to heat it. Anything you can put, your sprays, your spritzes, all of those kinds of things, 9 times out of 10, you will find that it will stick to it. So as long as you can keep this surface wet long enough for your embossing powder to stick, you should be pretty good. But most of us are familiar with Versamark. I mean, for crying out loud, they even have a marker that you can write your name or something in Versamark and then do that. And the reason why I'm loving tonight's segment is because Elizabeth Craft Design touched upon the Wow Mixed Media brush, but she didn't show us how to use it. This is something we do carry in the store, by the way. We love our Wow company. This is the same fluid that's in Versamark, except, hi, Terry, how are you? Except you can paint it on your substrate. It comes with a brush inside and you can paint it on your substrate. So if you're painting something or you want to get it, I'm going to show you that tonight as well. So you have to have a heat tool, you have to have a surface, you have to have something to attach your embossing powder to. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about embossing powders themselves. Now, of course, beau Creations has sparkling sand and marine and sparkling waters and we have several different embossing powders. But what is the difference between beau's embossing powders, Wow's embossing powders, Stampendous embossing powders, Ranger embossing powders? Well, the difference is this. There's not very much. I'm just going to be honest. There's something like 4 companies in the entire world that make embossing powders. So the chances that this embossing powder and beau embossing powders are the same company manufacturer is probably pretty good. But what matters is what's mixed in with the embossing powder. What exactly is embossing powder? It's just ground up plastic. Did you know that? It's just really fine ground up plastic, and it's colored plastic. So when we heat it with the heat tool, it will melt onto our surface. So what makes embossing powders interesting is the fineness of the grind, what they add to it as far as bonding agents go, and color, as well as, did they have glitter in it? Does it have different colors in it? And of course, Seth Apter, my favorite, has taken embossing powders to a new level, and he's put flocking in with his embossing powders and pieces of mica and all of that kind of stuff. So that's what makes the embossing powders different from company to company, is what is in it, such as ours has the sparkling embossing powder here, and I'm going to show you guys this in just a second. It has ultra thick embossing powder. It has gold embossing ultra thick. It has regular embossing powder and glitter. So that's what makes ours. It's just the type of powder and color is really the difference. So I'm going to show you a couple little tricks tonight. We're going to talk about bonding powder and refilling Versamark. Okay, so that is my goal tonight, and that's what we're gonna talk about. Okay, so what is the difference in embossing powders? Well, you have what they call detail embossing powder. Detail embossing powder simply means that it is grind up so fine that if you use a stamp to stamp your image, you're going to make sure that you want detail embossing powder, because sometimes the embossing powder can be so thick that, or big in chunk wise, that you lose some of your fine detail. Verna, I was getting to that. Verna has been with me for a long time. She knows what I'm going to do next. Verna, I love you. Okay, so here's what we're going to do to emboss. If you've never embossed before, let me show you how it's done. You have your sample or your paper or whatever you're going to put embossing powder on, and you're going to take your anti-static powder tool, and you're going to brush it across your surface, being careful not to touch this again, because that embossing powder can stick to the oils that is left behind by your finger. Okay, so you're going to take your Versamark. Oh, and let me show you this too. Do you guys see how I have a really nice clean one, and then I have this yuccified one? So the yuccified one is so I can do my mixed media and I won't get a bunch of junk in my embossing. My clean one is strictly for my stamping. So I'm just going to stamp my stamp. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to stamp that right onto the tag, okay? And I'm not sure if you guys can see, but it is on there. Can you see that? It says a gift for you. You can kind of see it shimmering. So then I'm going to take my embossing powder, and I want to use detail embossing powder. That is very important because the grind is really, really fine, okay? And so I'm going to take my embossing powder. This one happens to be the brand new one from, not the one that I want to use. So, come on. Sorry, guys. I'm grabbing my gold over here. Let's see. There we go. All right. So you're going to sprinkle your embossing powder on top of your Versamark. Okay. And most people want to flick it off. That's the first thing they do is they flip it over and they flick it off. Well, guess what happens when you flick it? You just make all the powder go everywhere and you didn't have that much left on there. So please do not flick the back of your project. Just tap it gently like that and you will get all of that embossing powder off. Okay. So once you do that, I just give it a little blow like that to make sure. I grab my paintbrush. If there's any floating flakes that I don't want, I just brush it off because you don't get a second chance unless you want to do it again. And then the most important thing is heat up your heat tool. Okay? Heat your heat tool up first. Mine is very loud, by the way, but it does the job. All right. Then you're going to take your heat tool and you're going to heat it until it changes color. Just like that. That's how quick it happens. Once it changes color to that shiny color and not a dull color, you are done. That's it. That's it. I'm a big fan of the double tippy tap with 2 fingers. That must be this one. Am I right, Irene? Is that what you're talking about? Tippy tap with 2 fingers. Everybody has their own method. Isn't that funny? Okay, so the reason that you want a detailed powder, and I'm telling you this as a friend and as a crafter, let me show you what happens when you use a deep embossing enamel or a thick embossing powder or ultra thick embossing enamel as we know it. You can see that this is way thick. You see, this looks like gold nuggets. So let me take this same stamp. It says a gift for you. I'm going to use my powder. I'm going to grab my Versamark and I'm going to stamp the same stamp right next door because I want you to see the difference between the 2 embossing powders. She said exactly right. How did I know that? Okay, so I'm going to put this ultra thick or deep impression or whatever you want to call it, embossing enamel on the back of this. And you can see right away, first of all, I didn't get as good a coverage as I'd like, so I have to do it again. There we go. And right off the bat, you can see it's kind of chunky and you don't have a very good feeling about this image, okay? Because it looks like it's just going to be kind of, you know, gritty or something looking. So let me show you how that turns out. Again, heat up your heat tool before you bring it to your paper. That's probably the most important tip that I can give. And you see that as soon as I bring the heat tool to it, you can see right away. Let's take a look at this. Come on, camera. So you see how it kind of has these like gritty edges right here. I don't know if you guys can see that. Do you see how the edges of that G are not exactly as sharp as this one? And how the 4U is kind of blurry a little bit? That's because this one is not a detailed powder. This one is. So sometimes if you want that look, go for it. But if you want a cleaner, finer look, you need to use the detailed embossing powder. Okay? So that's tip number 1. Let's try, I want to show you guys something else. So let's say that you come home from the store and you have bought a brand new embossing powder, let's say like I did this one, and I can't really tell what it's going to look like. You know, I can't tell what it's going to look like. So what I do is I take the cap of my embossing powder and I stick it in the Versamark just like that. I open up the bottle. Okay. I'm going to grab me a piece of paper to put underneath here, or see if I have a coffee filter or something. Oh, I've got a piece of paper. Okay. So then I take my cap and I sprinkle that embossing powder on top of my cap. And then I brush it. Well, I don't brush it. I just kind of wipe it off. I put my cap back on. And then I take my heat tool. I heat my heat tool up. Get it nice and warm. And then I take my cap and I heat that embossing powder right on top of my cap. Now that it's done, every time I look in my drawer for my embossing powders, oh yeah, with the cap on, absolutely. Now when I have all of my embossing powders standing in my drawer, I can see what color that embossing powder is going to be. And I do that with every time I buy a new embossing powder, that's what I do. Every single time. Like you can see my gold right here. So I know what my embossing powder is going to look like every single time I use my embossing powder. Isn't that cool? That is one of my favorite tips to show, because I just really, really think that, you know, if you've got them all standing in your drawer, all of them have a white cap. How are you going to, know unless you turn it upside down? Maybe, but sometimes there's a price sticker on it. So I just find that's the best way of storing my embossing powders, where I know what it is, So that's my pro tip number, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, I don't know. Okay, now I'm going to grab another tag. Let's say that I want to, put some glitter on my sentiment. I just have some basic glitter right there. Now, here's what I'm going to show you. This one is like a exact, pro tip number 22. So let's pretend like I have this butterfly stamp that I want to put in glitter on my card. Okay. So I put my stamp on my block, and this stamp is filthy, you guys. Let me, because someone did not put their stamps away clean. Can't imagine who that was. Had to be one of my little elfkins or something, because I would never leave my stamps dirty. All right. So there we go. So I have just wiped off my stamp. There we are. And let's say I want to put some glitter. But you know as well as I do, if you put Versamark and put glitter, as soon as the Versamark goes away, then the glitter falls off, right? So I'm going to show you both on black paper and this white tag here how you can get that pink glitter to stay on this card. All right. First of all, you are absolutely going to need your embossing powder, anti-static embossing tool. Okay. That's always a must. There we go. I've got my Versamark. I'm going to do my stamping. Let's see. There's my Versamark. There we go. On the black and then on the white. Okay. So both of them are stamped. And now there is this bonding powder. This is what I wanted to show you guys. This is like heatable glue. Hi, Annie. How are you? Let me see if I can get this open. Ooh, there we go. This is like what they put in embossing powders to make them stick. It's not like it is. It's actually what it is. So you sprinkle it on very much the same way that you would if it was just a regular embossing powder. Okay. So there's my image. Let me put this back in the container. Maybe I can bend this. I don't know. Let's see. I should have used the thinner one. Okay. So now this is the glue that's going to make your glitter stick. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to have your glitter ready. And of course, this is a mess for me, but I'm taking one for the team, you guys. I just want you to know that. Okay. And I've got my glitter ready because I'm going to take my heat tool. Okay. And I'm going to heat my heat tool up. Like I said, I'm going to get my glitter ready. Okay. So once I heat this, it becomes glue. I'm going to sprinkle my glitter on. I'm going to heat this. And I'm going to sprinkle my glitter on. Now, we're going to let that cool. I'm going to try to put my glitter back in this bottle. That's probably not going to work so well for me. There we go. Put this glitter away before it gets all over everything. You can see that the static is sticking to the paper right now, but that's okay because watch what's going to happen when we take our handy dandy little dry brush here. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to heat it one more time. I totally forgot about that. See what happens? So then you heat it again. Okay, there you go. And then once it cools off, that glitter will not come off of your tag. It came off of that one because I forgot to heat set that one again. I don't use this as often as I use my embossing powder, so I kind of forgot about that. But you can see that my glitter is sticking because it's stuck to my powder. This glitter was a bad example because it really is very static friendly, if you know what I mean. There we go. I got to brush it off. It's going to stick to everything because it's that microfine glitter. So if you want to use glitter, now that will never come off of there. Okay. That is the bonding agent that they put into embossing powders to make embossing powder stick. It's like a powdered glue. You don't have to necessarily just use it on glitter. You can use it on other things. It's one of those, it's just a glue. It's just another form of adhesive. And you heat set it before, you put the glitter on, heat set it afterwards, and you have a beautiful image like that. Okay? Now, we've talked about stamping with embossing powder. We've talked about, I'm going to have to go behind there and get my image. We've talked about detailed versus ultra thick. We've talked about what embossing powder actually is and also what a bonding agent can do. So now let's talk about the different methods of getting your Versamark on there. Okay. So let's say you have a VersaFine marker. Okay. And I have maybe a tiny little image that I want to emboss. Now this is some anchors that I cut out on our laser. And let's say that, oh, I don't know, I could take a pair of tweezers, and I do this all the time. I stick it in my Versamark, except let me get my yucky one. I stick it in my Versamark and I press it down and I get the Versamark all over my piece. And you'll see there's like a little anchor left in the image there. That's because this piece is dirty. That's why I have a dirty one and a clean one. And I make sure that my piece, you could use buttons, you could use wood, you could use chipboard, you can use whatever you want. As long as the Versamark will stick to it, so will your embossing powder. Okay. So you could use this Versamark, but let's say it's just a tiny little something. Well, there's a couple of things that you can do. Okay. So let's say first you could take your Versamark pen and you could ink the surface with your Versamark pen. So this makes good, quick work of little projects. And I really do use this sometimes if I want to write with it. It has a nice tip on it, you know, that I can use. So that's one option. But another option that Elizabeth Craft Designs touched on in our Els from Elizabeth Craft Design touched on in our retreat this weekend is the Wow brush by Seth Apter. Okay. Now, there are drawbacks with everything. This is a really, really thick fluid in here. It's the same thing that's on your embossing watermark stamp pad. So you can take this and then paint your Versamark onto your image. But just like nail polish, when you go to polish your nails, it all depends on how much fluid is in the brush as to whether or not it's goopy or whether it comes out nice and clean. So my advice is if you use this brush, to make sure that you wipe the excess off the brush before you decide to put it on your substrate, okay? So now we have 3 anchors that have Versamark on them, and these are chipboard, all right? So you can see what the difference was. There was no residue with this. There was minimal residue with the marker, but there was a lot on there from that, right? So let's find out what we want to do. I want to talk about the ultra thick embossing enamel. This is from Ranger. It's called ultra thick embossing enamel, and it is very, very thick grind. Okay, so I'm just going to put it right down in the embossing powder, and it's going to stick to it, and I'm going to melt it on with my heat tool. Okay, let me show you a little something that you can do that I bet maybe you knew, maybe you didn't. See, a lot of this I feel like you guys might already know, but sometimes we struggle with the heat part of it, and we end up going, oh, it doesn't ever work for me, so I don't know, I don't do it a lot. Well, we'll get to that in just a second. Let's take let's say Beau Aquamarine, okay, because I want to show you that there's really not a lot of difference in embossing powders. And just like I told you before, instead of the black ultra thick embossing enamel, mine has gold. So I'm just going to take one of these little anchors and I'm going to dip it down in there with my tweezers. And then I'm going to lay that down for me to heat emboss in just 1 minute. Okay. And then the third one, oh, I don't know. Let's use our detailed powder. Okay. Because we just used that just a moment ago. So let's use our detailed powder. And with this, I'm going to put it right on the cap because I can't get it down into the jar. So I'm just going to pour my embossing powder over the top of that. And then just make sure that and that one does not have very much embossing powder on it. So I must have missed a spot with the brush. That's all right. I'll show you what happens in just a second. All right. So let's get our heat tool nice and warm. So I'm just going to hold this down with my tweezers because it gets very hot. And you can see that that didn't hardly stick at all. So my technique with that brush needs to get a little bit better. Here is our aquamarine. There we go. And you can see that that embossing gun just blew that embossing powder all over the place. Well, that's because I had it on high speed. Look at the difference. Isn't that incredible? Can you guys see that? How clear and glassy that looks? Isn't that cool? Oops, get off my brush. My tweezers. Get off my tweezers. Okay, so let me bring these up on the back of the white tag so that you guys can see these in real time. Can you see that? So this one hardly got any gold on it at all, but I kind of like the look. And then you can see the glossy one on this one and that aquamarine right there. Isn't that cool? So that ultra thick embossing enamel is what gave this one that kind of shiny, a powdery, look. And that is the ultra thick embossing powder. And it's kind of like a glossy surface. But let me show you something super cool. If you take that ultra thick embossing enamel, okay, and you put it back on your Versamark pad, got to get out my grungy one. If you take and reapply that Versamark ink, just like that, and I don't know, let's say we add the sparkling waters, beau sparkling waters. Let's add a little bit of that because this has some blue glitter in it. Okay, so and white ultra thick embossing enamel. So I'm just going to add a little bit to it because I don't want to take away from the whole black underneath thing. So I've just kind of spattered it here and there. Christy says, this is incredible. More. Hey, Irene. So at the retreat, somebody said we're over adhesers and we're proud. We laughed about that for a day and a half. They're over adhesers. Now it's incredible. All right, so I'm just going to turn that heat down just a second because I don't want to blow everything all over the place like I'm getting ready to do before I grab a hold of my... All right, there we go. Now we're going to heat this again. There we go. And I am actually blowing that powder. Look at that. Okay. So now we've got a little bit of black. Let's put this on the white so that we can see. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? Now, watch this. This is the most fun part that I love about the clear, ultra thick embossing enamel. All right. Here we go. I'm going to take this, let's hope that it's cool. If it's not, I just stuck my finger in it. Nope, it's cool. Okay. I'm going to grab my Versamark again. I'm going to take this. Now, remember, this is 2 layers of embossing powder now. I'm going to do this one more time. All right. Watch. I want you guys to see how much this particular step changes the look of this anchor. Okay. So I'm going to dip this down inside, get that clear embossing enamel on it. Okay. There we go. Close up my stuff. Heat up my heat tool. I'm going to turn it on high at first and then lower it down before I bring it to my anchor. Okay. I hope you guys can see. All right, there we go. All right, let's bring this up to the camera. I don't know about y'all, but that kind of looks like granite to me. That kind of looks like granite. So if you want to do something that it mimics a rock, there you go, right there. That looks like granite. How cool is that? So, it just depends on what product you're using. It depends on what technique you decide to go for, what look you decide to go for. And like I said before, other than the ultra, the embossing powder that you use to create your project with, that's what's going to make the difference. So your Versamark. Oh, and by the way, somebody asked me the other day if I could show them how to re-ink my Versamark pad. So we do sell a Versamark refill, just like your other stuff. And so what you're going to do, your other re-inkers, and what you're going to do is you're going to squeeze this super thick embossing, this Versamark ink onto your ink pad. All right, so you're just going to squirt it on there. Make sure you do like a little circle or whatever around your ink pad, and then stop squeezing. Take the tip of the Versamark and just work that into the pad. Okay. And you'll see that if your pad is really thirsty, it'll start to soak up that embossing fluid really, really quickly. Mine is very thirsty because it has been sitting a while without a re-ink. So I'm just going to squirt some more on there. And yes, you can re-ink your Versamark pads. Okay. If your pad gets to the point where it seems like it's disintegrating, it will get old over time, and sometimes you will need to replace it. But there's no need to replace it every single time you get dry. You can put a refill on it, and then you just work it in with your tip of your bottle. And if you have to do it a couple of times, you got to do it a couple of times. I mean, that just depends on how thirsty your pad is. There you go. And then that's how you re-ink your Versamark pad. Okay. That's it. That's all there is to it. So there we go. Yes, you guys are already trained. Did somebody tell you to do BoQ Live, or you guys just know right now? I don't know if I have a moderator this evening. So congratulations on putting the BoQ Live. I'm so proud of you guys. Now, the thing is, if y'all are just doing it on your own, then, well, I don't know how to do the little live wheel. So, you know, we're just going to have to make sure we get back to you on that. But if we have our moderator on board today, it's on the screen. Okay. Well, let me see if I can. There it is. Annie, you're so correct. Look at that.
I'm actually here, Joyce.
Oh, I'm like, is that just magic? Is it just happening because, you know? Well, thank you, Jennifer. I'm glad. And do you see how well we've gotten them trained already?
No, I put it on the screen. That's when they started doing it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're getting trained now to our ways. So I'm glad you're here to do the live drawing for us. So I hope you guys enjoyed that tonight, because I think a lot of people get stuck on embossing and they can't figure out how it's done correctly. And then they get frustrated and give up. So I hope you'll at least try, you know, to do this, because it's a lot of fun and it produces a great result. Great result. So, okay, here we go. So if you have not already put BoQ Live, please do so that we can draw. And what are they going to win tonight? Jen will draw, and then I'll show you what we're going to get. All right, so let's go ahead, and the winner tonight is going to win a 3-pack of the BoQ Creations Beach Memories embossing powder, and it has the gold, the pink, and the blue. And looks like the winner is Diana Nago. Woo! Congratulations, Diana. So you have won the 3-pack of BoQ Creations Beach Memories embossing powders. And it has the blue, the pink, and the sand. In fact, I think one of them is called Waters. The other one is called Seashell. And the third one is called Sand. You've been afraid of embossing powder, makes it less intimidating. You know what? People just need to understand you need to understand, first of all, what this fluid does, what the powder is. And the most important tool that I can leave with you, the most important tip that I can leave with you, is to always make sure that you heat your heat tool before you apply it, because otherwise you just blow everything all over the place and, you know, you get not so good results. So embossing powder, like Leanne, it was the first time somebody showed me, and I'm like, oh, I got to do that some more. I got to do that. I love it. So all right, so the deal of the week is embossing powders. We have all different kinds here at the store. We have this little sticker shows that they're in the system. So embossing powders, we have copper, we have all different kinds from Seth Apter. And of course, I have not marked the top of your embossing powders because that's for you to do. But we do have quite a few here at the store, and the selection is pretty good. So BoQCreations.com embossing powders. We are currently out of stock on this, but we are getting it back in. So if you want the brush bottle, please send us an email or get a hold of me at the store, 407-250-5004. That's our number, and we'll make sure that you get one when they come in. Okay? I hope you all enjoyed that this evening. Have a great evening, and thank you for joining us. I told you it was everything you never wanted to know about embossing powders, but I'm so glad that you guys joined us tonight. So congratulations, Diana. This will be sent to you. You have won that pack, and thank you all so much for watching us tonight, and I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. All right? Thanks, guys. Bye.